So it's no secret that Twitter is filled with people who post and repost things that sound true, but aren't actually true, and they don't even find out that it's not actually true because they can't be bothered to fact check or verify anything that they post. And Christian Twitter is unfortunately no different. I actually found the video that I'm going to respond to today from the repost feed of a low information Christian who also can't be bothered to fact check the things that he reposts. And so that's how I found this video, is through him. Now, this video and this post, we're going to go through it because they contain numerous inaccuracies. And I think it's important that we call this stuff out, especially when it pertains to church history and lies about church history, which these set of posts do. I'm going to count it as multiple posts because we have a video and then we have a caption. So I'm going to respond to the caption first. Basically, the claim is that there were 777 books of the Bible. We only have 66 of those. That's already false from just the onset, because we, as Catholics, have 73. And there were disputed books of the Bible. The reason for this is because there were books that were authored and they could not be traced back to apostles or anybody who would actually have any familiarity with the events that they described, so they were rejected. So it wasn't this campaign to hide information like this caption is claiming. And to make things worse, these disputed texts don't number anywhere close to 700. So that's just a blatant lie. I would like this guy to attach any kind of scholarly sources for his claims. He doesn't. All he attaches is a video. And then he says that the White House obtained these texts from the Vatican. Again, no source. And we'll soon find out what these texts reveal. I don't think that's going to happen because these texts just don't exist. And the texts that are disputed, people can go read for themselves. There are like Gnostic Gospels, like the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Judas, that are forgeries that were rejected by the church because of the fact that they're forgeries, not out of some, intentional, malicious campaign that's going to be relevant in a second. So we're going to respond to this video because the video that he provides as his only evidence is going to contain a lot of inaccuracies as well.
In the year 325, something happened. Our texts were edited, and we lost tremendous amounts of information.
No. So, in the year 325, there was an important event in church history, but it had nothing to do with Scripture. It was called the Council of Nicaea, and it had to do with addressing a heresy and a dispute in the early church. Basically, the dispute was, is Christ divine or is he a created creature like everybody else? The council ended up deciding that he is God, and so laid the framework for Trinitarianism and rejected the view. Now, none of that has anything to do with Scripture.
The Emperor Constantine, in the early Christian church, with the early Christian Bible, had to make decisions. What information do we include? What information do we exclude?
This is false. There was not a set canon of Scripture until the year 396. This is when they did their research and their fact-checking, which is unfortunately what Christians apparently can't do in this day and age. Apparently the early church could do it, but these guys can't. They did not set up a canon until the year 396, when this was officially decided at another council. So Constantine had nothing to do with the canon of Scripture or anything to do with Scripture at all. He just presided over this council and let the bishops do their thing. And to prove this, I'm going to show you the text of the Council of Nicaea. You guys can go read this for yourselves, but right here it's basically saying that anybody who says that Christ was from things that once were not, which basically means he was created, and that he is of a different substance than the Father, is to be anathema, so is to be separated from the church. None of this has anything to do with the scriptures. Now, if we go down here, there is a letter from, I believe, the bishops.
The letter of the Synod of Nicaea to the Egyptians, heading left.
Yep, this is the letter from the Synod, and basically they're just talking about Arius, which is the guy they were having the dispute with, and they were saying that he was saying a bunch of blasphemy and that his statements are to be rejected in very strong language. So if you were to read all this council, the canons, the letter, the anathema, all that stuff, it's pretty short. You can read this pretty fast. None of that has anything to do with scripture. And Constantine is only mentioned because he presided over this council, because he was the emperor, and he had only recently converted to Christianity and legalized it, which meant that the Christian church could finally do its thing of having its councils openly and without fear of being persecuted, because that's what was happening in Rome. So that is sufficient to refute his claims, but he has more. He has more to say. So let's listen to that.
And what we know now is that at least 45 books were either completely taken away or tremendously edited into what we call today our Western biblical tradition. And when those edits were made, we lost the information that tells us everything is connected. We lost the information that tells us the language that speaks to this field. We know the information was lost because we are now recovering the information.
Right. So I would like a source for any of these claims. I guess the issue with a lot of these people who post misinformation about Christianity and church history is that they just have no sources for their claims. I mean, I looked at somebody who was claiming to have the original Lord's Prayer in Aramaic, and it was a complete absurdity, and they provided no justification for it. Where are the scholarly sources that back up these claims? And why are you representing the removal of these disputed books as some kind of misinformation campaign or malicious campaign to hide things from people? And there was a big revisionist era, I guess, when they're compiling the scriptures. These are all lies. None of this actually happened. And like I said, the reason that I made the claim that the scriptures, or supposed scriptures, that were removed, that were disputed, the reason they were removed is because they were forgeries and could not be trusted. I made sure to make that very clear because these people will not tell you that. They will not tell you that these are forgeries in nature, that they don't trace back to the original apostles, that they date to the 2nd century and not within a decade or so of the death and resurrection of Christ, like some of the New Testament books do, and that they don't date in the 1st century like all of the New Testament does. That's why they were rejected. They don't tell you this, obviously, because it doesn't fit their narrative that they're trying to push for some weird reason. But essentially, the takeaway from this is the Council of Nicaea that happened in 325 had nothing to do with Scripture. The disputed books of Scripture do not number anywhere close to 700. I don't even think they number anywhere close to 800 or even 50. This guy himself claims that it's 45, and the person who put a caption on this claims it's 700, so these guys can't even keep it straight. And that the disputed books that were not included in the biblical canon were removed because they were rather not included because they weren't ever part of Scripture. But they weren't included because they were forgeries. That is the truth of the matter. And for some reason, this absurd Council of Nicaea conspiracy theory always makes the round among fundamentalist circles who just don't know any better, I guess. Fundamentalism is inherently a flawed position anyway, so I'm not surprised that this is happening. But there's always things like this being posted all the time, and they need to be debunked because it takes only a little bit to make this kind of stuff and make these claims, but it takes a little bit to debunk this stuff. And by a little bit, I mean it takes some work to debunk this stuff. Anybody can make claims, but to actually debunk them and reveal the truth, you have to do some work, which I am willing to do, and I will be making more videos on false church history that people promote and false doctrines and all this kind of stuff, because people having this kind of information is important. That's why I encourage people who want to know about these subjects to study them for themselves. Don't just take my word for it. Go read the council. Go research the disputed books and why they were disputed. Learn that they were forgeries and they didn't trace back to the apostles and they dated to the 2nd century, and that's why they were rejected. And be at peace and don't worry about how the Bible is supposedly compromised and the New Testament is supposedly compromised, because it just simply is not. We can be at peace with that fact. Apparently these guys want it to be compromised though or something, because they post all the time about how it is. So that will wrap this up, and if you enjoyed this content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Leave a comment if you have anything else for me to cover, and yeah, God bless. See you guys next time.